All right, so good evening, welcome. Today we're going to learn how to use Handshake as well as LinkedIn. I know Brian sent out to you all a little pre-homework before this presentation to actually create a Handshake profile as well as a LinkedIn profile. If you did that, wonderful, you're ahead of the game. If not, I will absolutely walk you through every step on how to create both a Handshake and a LinkedIn profile today. Just so you all know, my name is Colleen Tesher. I am currently a student at the School of Labor and Employment Relations. I am getting my master's in human resources and industrial relations, and I'll graduate in December. I am a mock interviewer at the Career Center, and so that's why I'm giving this presentation today. As I mentioned, so this recording will be sent to Brian and uploaded on line afterwards, and he will send you the link on how to find that. I want to make this as interactive as possible, and so this presentation is very much about you all. And so if you have any any questions whatsoever, feel free to throw them in the chat or unmute yourselves and ask. We have a smaller group today, and so if you have any questions, just feel free to ask them as we go along. Okay, so we're going to begin by talking about Handshake, and then we'll answer all of your questions about Handshake, then we'll move on to LinkedIn. So to begin, what is Handshake? It is a career management system that is used by all career services office at U of I. And so what happens is employers come to the career services and say, hey, post this job on Handshake for me. And then the students, you all, can go on Handshake and apply to those internships, jobs, figure out when the events are happening on campus, as well as career fairs. And so since you're all Illinois students, you have a free Handshake account. So why Handshake? It is so unbelievably student-friendly and easy to use. If you're anything like myself, I learned by doing. And so going on Handshake and spending 15 minutes just clicking on all the tabs and going through the introduction when you sign up is a great way to figure out how to use Handshake. And I'll tell you more tricks as we go through this presentation. One of the reasons I believe that U of I chose Handshake as this platform is because it utilizes machine learning to provide really a customized experience for all the students and employers who use it. Handshake allows you to get connected and figure out when career fairs are happening, what employers are going to be at career fair, when on-campus interviews are happening. And so if you applied to an internship on Handshake, the actual application would pop up. A lot of times employers have you apply on Handshake and on their external website, but if you applied on Handshake, the interview slots would also appear in Handshake. You can also apply to full-time jobs, internships, as well as campus jobs, which is a really neat feature, I think. And then when you are hopefully going to interview for a company, you can pull up the company's profile and also read reviews about what previous or current employees said about the company. And then the last feature is that you can message other peers on Handshake. So some additional features that I want to point out, when you're creating your Handshake, I don't know if you all saw this, but when you click on my profile, you have to make sure, if you look at the image to the right on the bottom, you have to make sure that your profile is visible to employers. All it takes is a check mark, but if you don't have that checked, the employer won't see your profile. And so that's very important, and I want to stress that. Employers can preference what type of student they want applying to their internship. And so if you see the red box to the right, this student who applied, they met the major requirements, the GPA requirements, and the work authorization requirement, but they didn't meet the school year requirement. That doesn't mean you still can't apply to that position. It just means that employers are less likely to interview you if all of those preferences don't match. So here I mentioned a lot of these, but Handshake has so many features that you definitely should take advantage of. So under the name section, starting from the left, you can go and you can edit your profile. And so I update my Handshake profile just as much as I update my LinkedIn and my resume to make sure they all have my most recent experiences and they're all up to date. Anytime I make a change to my resume, I re-upload my resume on Handshake and I keep it my most up to date version on Handshake. As well as under your profile, you can click and specify your career interests. And so, as I mentioned, I'm going into HR, and so my career interest says student interested in human resources, recruiting, talent management, and so I included all of those. For the jobs, Handshake is awesome for job searching. You can actually apply directly on Handshake. And so if you have your resume uploaded in the My Profile section, when you go ahead and you apply to a job on Handshake, all it takes is one click and says, it asks you if you want to use your resume that's already uploaded on Handshake, and you can hit yes, and then your resume will be there and you could submit with, I swear, 2 clicks. It's really, really easy. Also, as I mentioned, all on-campus interviewing will be posted on Handshake, and you can sign up for your slot that you're going to interview directly on the website. For events, so when I was going through recruiting, I would go on Handshake and click the events tab. And when I did that, I would figure out what companies were coming and having info sessions, and then I would RSVP so they would have my info. And that's how you know when info sessions are happening, when events on campus are happening, as well as when career fairs on campus are happening. Something that I actually just found out was you can actually make an appointment for the Career Center through Handshake, which is great. And there's also an abundance of resources on Handshake under the Career Center tab, and it's articles upon articles on how to interview, how to apply to jobs, how to best utilize Handshake. And so those are really great resources to look at as well. Including there's a Q&A section where you all could actually post a Q&A or a question on Handshake and someone else would answer. And so a question that I could post is, what's it like to intern at General Mills? And someone who interned at General Mills could go on, if they saw that question, and answer it. It's sort of like a Wikipedia, but on Handshake. You can also connect with other students as well as get messages or send messages from students or employers, which is really, really helpful. And so as a standard, whenever I receive a message from an employer, if they are saying, hey, check out our internship or our job position, if I'm not interested in that company, I copy and paste a generic sentence saying, thank you for this opportunity. I already have an internship. I'll be sure to reach out in the future if I'm interested. You would never want to just not answer someone because think about it, they're a person too. Okay, so logging in on Handshake, you'll log in with your NetID and your password. If anyone had trouble logging on and creating an account with Handshake, at the end, stick around and I can help you or point you in the right direction on how to log in. So this is what your Handshake should look like. And so as I mentioned, all of the tabs you can see at the top. So there's jobs, events, the Q&A, you can hit students, messages, or the Career Center. And then if you see Samantha at the top, if you hit that drop-down arrow, it would populate with more options. And if you hit my profile, your profile would come up. And so as you can see, there's on-campus jobs you could apply for, there's upcoming events. It's just like a reminder on all of the great things that are happening for you all every single day. And so this is what the job search would look like. So if you see at the right under the blue header, if you see job search, applications, employers, and on-campus interviews, So if you hit job search, you could search any job. And I think one of the great things about Handshake is the filters option. And so if you wanted only an internship, you wanted to be in Chicago, you wanted to be interning with or in a specific department like finance, you can search all of those things and all of the jobs would come up. And as you can see, if you were going to apply to this elite teacher internship, employers are less likely to interview you if your school year doesn't match. And so this person probably wouldn't apply to that first one, but there's so many more options that they could apply for. And so directing your eyes back up at the right underneath the blue header, if right next to job search, if you clicked on applications, that would show you a list of all the jobs you applied for and if the company accepted your application, if they were still reviewing it, if you got an interview. And so I spent a lot of time under that applications section when I was going through recruiting. And so this is another feature that I actually just found out about while I was preparing for this presentation. So if you want to learn about Handshake in 2 minutes or less, you'll just go to the Handshake Help Center. It's on Handshake. You'll click student, and then there's so many different features. So there's 2-minute training videos on how to use Handshake. You could click on my profile, and there's questions and answers on how to best update your profile to get an internship and to get a job. And so this is a really useful resource that you all will now have and know about moving forward. And so I believe you all created your Handshake. And so at the end, or we could talk about it now if you want, did anyone have any trouble actually creating their Handshake account, or were you guys all good? Okay, I'm gonna take that as you guys were all good and you all are Handshake experts now. If there's any questions, jot them down and we could always talk about it at the end, one-on-one. All right, so now we're going to move on to LinkedIn. And so before we move on, are there any questions whatsoever about Handshake? Okay, we are gonna get started. And so if you're not familiar, LinkedIn is it's a little bit different than a social media site, but it is specifically designed for students like you and really all individuals to find jobs and internships and connect with people on a professional level. And so I'm going to play this video, and if you all can't hear it, please stop me at any point.
If you're watching this, chances are good you want to get a job. You want to go from student to rising star. You want to avoid eating the same meal over and over and over again. Good news, you're in the right place. That's right, LinkedIn. It's not just for top executives. It's not just for old people with heavy briefcases. It's for you, and it's the perfect place for you to start your professional story. Say you want to get a job in New York City. Never been there before, that's okay because you have LinkedIn on your side. You start by creating your profile. You give it love because you know it's what recruiters are looking for day and night. It's your resume that never sleeps. Your flashing neon sign that says, hire me, for the love of all that is good in this world, hire me. Then you start making connections. Alumni working in New York? Yes. Recruiters at top companies in New York? Yes. Your mom's best friend? Yes. Start imagining whose shoes you want to walk in. You think, wow, this is a lot of deep stuff to consider. You shake yourself out of it and start searching for jobs. Whoa, that's a lot of jobs for students. Time to get down to business. You start to tailor your profile. You start applying. You feel empowered, in control, like you should be CEO. That gives you an idea. You look up all the CEOs of all the companies you want to work at. You see one of them went to your university. Then it hits you. You see a clear path from campus to career. You feel like you can see the future. You wonder if you're psychic. Should you start a hotline? No, back to plan A. You keep tailoring and connecting and applying, and before you know it, you start getting responses. First a few, then more, then an interview, and then you're hired. And that's when the real learning begins.
Okay, great. So I personally love that video. I think that one of the things I always point out is that LinkedIn is really your resume that never sleeps. All recruiters are on LinkedIn searching for candidates. And so one of the really cool features that LinkedIn has is if you create your profile, you can actually click on whether or not you're actively searching for a job. And so when recruiters filter someone for a specific industry, for a specific position, they'll be more likely to reach out to the person who clicked the box actively searching for a job. I also like that that video pointed out that you should tailor your profile before applying. And so your profile doesn't have to be, um, you don't have to spend 3 weeks creating your profile, but you definitely want to spend some time and tailor it before you begin to apply to jobs, because once you start putting your application out there, then the recruiters will see you. And so make sure it's up to date before applying. So, a few of the reasons why I love LinkedIn personally, I spend more time on LinkedIn than any other social media site, just for the articles alone. And LinkedIn, I definitely utilized when applying to internships last fall. But LinkedIn is unbelievable. There are 400 million professionals on LinkedIn, and 39 million students or recent graduates on LinkedIn. There's over 150 industries, and there are nearly 3 million active job listings. There's executives from every Fortune 500 firm. I personally know I would never connect with an executive that I don't know, but I follow a lot of executives. That way, if they post anything or they like anything, it comes up on my LinkedIn homepage and I can keep up with that executive or company. And there's also 60,000 plus colleges and university alumni groups on LinkedIn. So a lot of people might ask the question, how does my LinkedIn profile differ from my resume? And so, as I mentioned, LinkedIn is your resume that never sleeps. So a LinkedIn profile allows you to provide a more in-depth details of your experience and your skills on your profile. So I personally know that my resume can only be one page, and I would recommend your resumes be one page too. And so I have a few experiences that didn't fit on my resume, but I absolutely have them on my LinkedIn because they're important and they're relevant to the job that I'm pursuing. I just didn't have room to put them on my resume. Another cool thing that differs LinkedIn from a resume is that you can receive recommendations from peers, professionals, and employers. So a few summers ago, my boss at the end of the summer shot me an email and was like, "Hi, thinking of you. I was wondering if you could write me a recommendation of how I was as a boss." And so I went on her profile and wrote a recommendation for her that was visible to everybody based on the experience I had. And LinkedIn also allows you to network with others. LinkedIn, you can connect with really anybody that you know and use them for a professional connection in the future. And so it seems like there's a lot going on with LinkedIn. I'll go through and break down some of the parts because I know it can be overwhelming to help you guys start. So the first thing to do is to create a profile. So as you can see, this is David. It's very easy to see that he's an econ major and he wants to be a financial analysis or an analyst. You can see that he wrote a nice little short summary talking more about himself, and that he went to the University of California in Berkeley. So the first step I would recommend is to make sure you all have a professional picture. Make sure you're professionally dressed with a blazer on, in a bright location, and make sure you're alone. You would never want to crop a picture with someone else for your LinkedIn profile. I know that the Career Center offers pictures, professional headshots to be taken about once or twice a semester. I know we're not on campus right now, and so I actually in the past have taken a picture for my friend on portrait mode. All of our iPhones are really good quality. And so if you all used portrait mode and had someone take a picture outside in a blazer, I think that would absolutely be acceptable for that. And we had a question, should pictures be in color or black and white? And I would recommend them being in color just because it's more professional. I suppose if you were maybe um, a student going into a creative profession where you wanted the aesthetic, but for the most part, I would recommend that your pictures in color. And so an example, this would be a poor example because you don't know who the person is, and they're also in t-shirts. And the example right here is a great example because she's professional, she has a sweater or blazer on, you could clearly see her face, and there's nothing really distracting who she is. In terms of the profile components, you want to include a headline. So this would be a professional slogan explaining your area of study and or your career ambitions. And you'll want to describe what you're currently doing, and touch on your professional goals in your headline. By default, LinkedIn actually sets your most recent experience and job title as your headline. And so if you want to change that, it's very simple. You just unclick the box that says set it as your most recent experience. And so to give you an example, my profile currently says MHRIR candidate at University of Illinois or School of Labor and Employment Relations. But once I begin my internship this summer, I'll change it to Human Resources Business Associate at General Mills. And so just a reminder to constantly be updating your LinkedIn because it is important. And so another recommendation is to customize your public profile URL. So you can actually shorten the URL to make it just your first and last name. If that's taken, add a number. I think that we have another question. So the question was, what should we include for industry if we aren't in a specific one and or are interested in several industries? So I would recommend, if you aren't really sure, you could put, well, I guess it depends on if you're interested in multiple different industries. I suppose it would depend on your major, because I guess if you were studying finance, the industry would be finance. If you want to unmute and maybe share with me what you're studying, I can help you figure out what industry to put.
Hi, I'm Yasmin. Thanks for your answer. But yeah, so I'm studying history, and I plan on going to grad school after graduation. But um, I'm not sure. So yeah, like the thing is, I don't really know what kind of industry. I do want to do like nonprofit, non-governmental work, but I'm not entirely sure how I should include that.
Well, I think if you know you want to do nonprofit work, if you're interested in that, I'm pretty sure you could make that. Oh, I suppose that wouldn't necessarily be the industry. I would imagine that you might be able to just put like you're interested in nonprofit work on there. What are you planning on going to grad school for?
International relations.
So then, do you hope to work for a nonprofit for international relations?
Yeah.
So I would probably put your industry international relations,
Okay. Thank you so much.
of course. Any other questions before we keep going? Okay, thank you for that question. So the next profile component that I want to talk about is the summary. And the summary could be intimidating to write. I have to be completely honest. I don't have a summary on my LinkedIn, and that's terrible because it is very, very important. But essentially it talks about, it's a brief explanation of who you are, what skills you have, and the types of positions you are seeking. And so, Yasmin, I think the summary would be really beneficial for you, to write out that, you're interested in profit work, you're interested in possibly non-governmental work, you said, with that interest in international relations. And so just elaborating a little bit more on really the skills that you bring, and also the future positions you hope to work for in the future, I think would be great to include in the summary. And then also in the summary, it's great to include your qualifications and also career goals. And so essentially, it is a condensed version of your cover letter. And so I know a few of my friends who actually uploaded their resume on their LinkedIn profile as well. That's absolutely okay to do. I think that personally, I think the resume is great to upload on Handshake because a recruiter can see that. But on LinkedIn, you don't necessarily need to upload your resume because it's all detailed and written out on your profile. But the summary is essentially a shortened version of your cover letter, connecting some of those dots. If you had a gap in employment, you might want to include that as well. Okay, so some of the other things you want to include are your education. So your major, your minor, your GPA. I always say if it's above a 3.0, include it. If it's below, leave it off. If you're not comfortable with including your GPA, that's absolutely okay. I don't think I have mine on my LinkedIn profile. Any honors or awards that you received, any courses relevant to your career goals. So say, for example, you studied you studied econ in undergrad, but you really have an interest in going into, say, for example, management consulting, a little bit different than that econ major. I would, if I were you, put relevant courses as, small business consulting and any other courses that could sort of prove that although you studied one thing, you took classes in what you want to pursue in the future. And also be sure to include any study abroad experiences. So for the experience itself, you'll want to highlight all of your work experiences and explain what you've accomplished in each position. So for me, I have bullets underneath each of my experiences, but I know some people who have paragraphs. You'll always want to, you'll try to focus on the transferable skills, but this is a nice opportunity to really expand what's on your resume a little bit further. Because I know personally on my resume, I only have 1 to 2 bullets on there, but on LinkedIn, you can elaborate and really go into more depth of what you did. And so also a cool feature that LinkedIn offers is, say you're a graphic design major and you have your own website, you can actually upload your website or put a link to it on LinkedIn where an employer would be able to click on that and see your work. I saw that we have another question in the chat. The question is there a way to preview how many I'm so sorry. Is there a way to preview how your page appears to others? There probably is, but personally what I do is I'll have like my sister pull up my LinkedIn and say, hey, let me go on my LinkedIn on your LinkedIn really quick just to see how it looks. And so just by asking a friend saying, hey, can you pull up my LinkedIn? I want to see how it looks. There might be a button to say like view my profile on how others might see it. I'm just not positive, but I'd recommend the friend thing. Okay, so I mentioned this, but recommendations are really, really unique to LinkedIn. So they're statements written by other LinkedIn members to recognize the connection you have with them. And so as I mentioned, my boss reached out to me and said, hey, can you write me a recommendation of how I was as your leader, because I was her intern. And so if you actually go to my profile, you can see on the bottom under recommendations, like the ones that I've given. And I haven't received a recommendation ever. However, hopefully in the future, an employer will write one for me. And so I think that it's totally acceptable and totally normal to reach out to a professor, an advisor, a supervisor, or any colleagues to say, hey, I had a great experience working with you. I was wondering if you could write me a recommendation on my LinkedIn profile. I think that's a great tip, especially if you're just getting your LinkedIn started. Another component is the skills. And so for me, I'm going to HR, and so I listed all of my relevant skills. And so one of the skills I have on my profile is public speaking, and other LinkedIn members can go and endorse me for public speaking. And so it's really neat because if you look at the example, so this person has economics, startups, due diligence, venture capital, and management. And so you can see all the connections that endorse that person for their skills. It's just another way to show to employers the skills that you possess. And then it's almost like your connections are agreeing that you possess those skills. And so I mentioned this, but you want to update your LinkedIn very regularly. Mention any projects, any professional books or articles or events you've attended. You want to create a unique URL. So linkedin.com/your first and last name, add a number if someone else has your first and last name. Creating this URL, it increases your professional presence as well as you'll want to have changes status to public. So you want anyone who pulls up your profile to be able to see all of your information because a lot of recruiters use LinkedIn to recruit. And then I mentioned this, but share your work. So if you created a website, if you created an app, if you are mentioned for being the smartest person in your school, put it on LinkedIn with the post or website attached. And so one of the great things, and the reason really I'm on LinkedIn so often, is you can follow companies and or organizations you're interested in. And so I follow my school, I follow U of I follow any company that I'm interested in keeping up to date with, or the companies that I hope to work for in the future. And another thing is, so this summer will be working for General Mills, and so I follow not only General Mills, but all of General Mills' competitors. That way I can stay up to date on what they're doing, on what the General Mills is doing. And those will appear at the bottom of your profile. And so other people can actually view who and what companies you follow. And so make sure, of course, it's appropriate. And then also, this allows you, some of the benefits of following these companies and organizations is you can learn the industry logo. So in undergrad, I studied psychology and communications and couldn't tell you the first thing about reading financial reports, but because of LinkedIn, because companies post their 10K or their quarterly reports, I became more familiar with reading those and really spruced up my business acumen because of it. And then we have a question in the chat. So the question is, will following a company notify you when a job opportunity comes up in that company? So if you go to, when you're searching for a job, if you go to, on LinkedIn, you can go to jobs that you want to apply for. You can actually give yourself notifications when a job opens up for that company. And so also, if a company posts that, you can absolutely get a notification if you go under jobs and select that box that says send me a notification when that job opens up. And so moving on, if there's no other questions. So who should you all connect with? You should connect with family, friends, professors, advisors, really anyone that you know. If there's someone who has a lot of similarities to you, if they are in the same industry as you, you can absolutely connect with that person, but I would send a message before you connect with them. Say, hello, my name's Colleen. I'm a graduate student in the LER school. I saw that you work at this company. Just like a short message and say, like, I hope that we can connect and be future connections for the future. So if you don't know them, that's always a good thing to send a message before you actually connect with them. So this is, I think, in my opinion, one of the coolest features of LinkedIn. So if you search on LinkedIn, University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, and you click See Alumni button, you can actually see all of the alumni who are on LinkedIn, and it divides it by job, by industry, by company. And so, like, for example, so sorry if you hear my dog, I apologize. So the other day I pulled up University of Illinois, See Alumni, and I was able to see all of the alumni who worked at Google. And that way, if you were dying to work at Google, you could actually message one of those alumni and say, "Hi, I'm a student at the University of Illinois. If you have 10 minutes to chat, I would love to hear more about your position and what's working at Google like." And they might blow you off, but they might also say yes and give you their phone number to connect with you. So moving forward, so this is actually talks a little bit more about connecting with alumni. So you'll want to send personalized invitations to connect with alumni. And so here's how you do it. So you can click on the person's profile. You can click the connect button and then add a note. And so once they accept your invitation, you can send them a message. And so um, you can set up an informational interview, like I mentioned. So it's typically done by the phone or in person. Be sure to prepare questions to ask ahead of time. You would never want to waste someone's time. And so usually how I get people to agree to talking to me is I say, "I'm available on Friday all day. If you have 10 minutes to spare, I would love to connect I would love to connect with you. Make sure you have questions. And when they respond, actively listen to what they're saying, take notes. And if you're dying to work at that company, at the end of the phone call, don't ask for a job, but maybe ask them for other connections that they could, um, other people in the organization that they could connect you to, and then always send a thank you note following that interaction with that person." And so moving on, for the job search, you can click the jobs tab at the top of your LinkedIn homepage. You can search by field, job title, keyword, or the company name. You can apply immediately or you could save jobs. And so we have another video on the top 5 profiles to do for LinkedIn.
Here's how to make your profile great. Number one, pick a This is me. Do a celebration dance. You feel good. You stand out. You know you're on your way because there are jobs to be found and recruiters will find you as you watch this. That's right. Right now, this very second. What are you waiting for? Go. Find. Be found.
All right. So before we get into questions, I'm really quickly going to talk about some of the resources that the Career Center offers. And especially because you're all home, if anyone has a internship interview or a job interview coming up, be sure to apply to the mock interview or be sure to sign up for a mock interview. All mock interviews are conducted over the phone or on Zoom and really are tailored to the job you're applying for, and specifically like all of the mock interviews look at your resume and they're very very tailored to help you succeed in your real interview. Also the Career Center is offering online coaching appointments, as well as I know the writers workshop is accepting papers to be submitted. If you're applying to grad school, you also can submit your personal statement through the Career Center, where someone will review your personal statement, and then you can actually sign up for a appointment to go through their recommendations on how you can improve your personal statement with that person. And then be sure to stay connected with the Career Center. With that being said, what questions can I answer? And I know you guys had a lot throughout the presentation, which I really appreciated.
Oh, hi. My name is Wisdom, and I was wondering on the handshake one. How did you get to the tab with the introduction on how to use it?
Sorry, are you on Handshake now?
Yes.
Here, what I'll do is I'll actually pull up Handshake and I could show you. Are you still able to see my screen or no?
No, I'm not able to see it.
Okay, one second. And so you were hoping to figure out which tab did you want to pull up?
I think it was on one of the slides like earlier in the presentation, and it had showed like different ways to use handshake,
Let's see.
if that makes sense.
Yes. I'm so sorry. Let's see. Oh, I know which one. So you can actually copy here. I will put in the chat the link to the
Okay.
services. So here is the link, and if you click on that, that should, if that's, I believe what you're talking about, the support for Handshake.
Okay, yeah. Mhm. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions I can answer? Okay, well, thank you all very much. As I mentioned, this is recorded and will be sent to Brian. And so once it's uploaded on the website, Brian will send it to you all to use for future reference. But really with Handshake and LinkedIn, going on and watching the tutorial videos definitely helped me, and just playing around with the website is really the best way to learn it. Thank you all for attending. I hope you're all safe and have a wonderful night.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.